Hello and welcome to another episode of Back to Basics, and today I'm going to be showing you how I make the simpler version of my industrial bases. For this one you'll only need a few materials and they really don't take very long at all, but I will be back in a few weeks doing an all about that base where I'm going to show you how to really make them pop and add loads of details and things like that. So let's head to the table and I'll see you in a bit. I've got one of my wooden bases here that I've just painted and primed just to stop it from absorbing everything that we put on it. And the first thing we're going to want to do is take some super glue. The gel stuff I find is a little bit better, but it's completely up to you. And some of this. Now this is actually, I think I searched for mosquito netting on eBay. And I found a huge piece of this, like 3 meters squared, for just a couple of pounds. So, and as you can see, it's just very fine mesh that once it's on this base and painted, it's going to look kind of like a metal grate effect. So we're just going to start by taking the super glue and covering the whole of the top of the base in it, making sure you get all the way to the edges. Then we're going to take the base and turn it upside down and press it down onto the mosquito netting. And make sure it's stuck. And once it's dry, all you need to do, because this is kind of a thin plasticky stuff, so all you need to do is take a pair of scissors and cut round the base. And it doesn't have to be neat, because, you know, this is going to be kind of worn metal. So if you've got some little bits, little jagged bits sticking off the edge, it just makes it a little bit more authentic. So I'm going to go and prime this in black and then we'll be right back. Now that's primed, the next step is to give it a good coating in Citadel Leadbelcher. Now if you've got the Leadbelcher priming spray, you can just go ahead and prime this in Leadbelcher instead and, you know, skip a step if you like. So I've just got some Leadbelcher on my palette, and what you need to do is use an old brush for this if you are doing it by hand, because you need to kind of push it into all the little gaps in the mosquito net. So you don't want to use a good brush for this because you'll run the risk of damaging it. So I will finish painting this, and then once it's dry I'll come back with the next step. Now that the Leadbelcher's dry, we're going to start adding some wear and weathering to this, and to start with we're going to use Citadel's Typhus Corrosion. Now if you haven't used this before, it's a strange one. It's kind of it's a very watery paint, but it has tiny fine grit in it that kind of leaves a slightly gritty texture. Now use an old brush for this, and once you've washed your brush off from using this, throw the water away and wash out your water container. You do not want this stuff getting on your good brushes. So you have been fairly warned. And all we're going to do with this is take some on the end of your brush and just start dabbing it on. Now you don't want to be you don't want to be too heavy-handed with this. Just dab it around all over. Doesn't matter if you leave some bits uncovered and some bits are slightly have more than other bits. And then just get a bit messy and use your finger just to kind of rub around and spread it out. And when you do this, you'll be able to feel that gritty texture to it. So there we go. And then leave that for an hour or two until it's completely dry. And then we will come back and make that look a bit more like rust. First of all, ignore what I just said about drying times, because this stuff doesn't take 2 hours to dry. It takes about 10 minutes to dry. So I don't know where I got that number from. So here we are, 10 minutes later. And we're now going to apply a light dry brush of Ryza Rust. Now, at first glance, this looks like it will be far too bright. But when you dry brush it on top of the Ryza Rust, it does come out with a really nice, authentic, rusty colour. So I've just applied some to my brush, and then I'm just wiping off the majority of it on my kitchen roll. And I'm going to use a big brush for this, and then we're just going to start swiping across and trying to catch all the bits that have got the Typhus corrosion. And you can see it's making it more of a realistic rust colour. Now you can be a little bit heavier in some areas and then a little bit lighter in others. It's completely up to you what effect you want to achieve. So there we go. And then following on from that, you'll see that there are some bits that haven't got the rust effect on around here. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to take a small dry brush and I'm going to take some Necron compound. I'm just going to get a little bit of that. You don't need much. And again, onto the kitchen roll and just smush it into your brush. And then very lightly, I'm just going to go back over these parts. And it just gives that illusion that some of this floor is a lot more worn than other bits. It's almost like it's a section of a path, and that's the bit that everybody walks on and no one walks near the edge. So once your dry brushing is done, we're just going to apply a nice wash of Agrax Earthshade. And again, sticking with an old brush for this because you don't want to pick up the bits of Ryza Rust. And we're going to be quite liberal and just coat this over the entire thing. And then, as a final step, I'm going to take my kitchen roll and just dab it. And all that does is it just takes off all the bits that are pooled in the little gaps between the mosquito net. And there you go. A nice, quick, simple industrial base. And something else that you can do with this one, and I will touch more on this in my all about that base, is that you can mix it up a little bit. So on this one, I've used the mosquito netting on half of it, but then something else on the other half. But as I said, when I do the all about that base in a few weeks, I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So there you go, that's my simple industrial base. I hope you found this video useful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel, and that way you will be notified whenever I release new content. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I've put the links to those down in the description. So I will be back on Saturday with another All About That Base video, and until then, happy hobbying!